I appreciate it. No. No, the camera's right here. Okay, let's get started. Even though there's only a few of us, there's a few people online. So, well, good evening. Welcome to Alpha. This is funny, there's a delay on this. So, you may still be wondering what you mean by Alpha. I asked Sue Ellen, why are you here? And she said, because she wants to support me, which was nice. But what is Alpha? Why are we here? What's the purpose of this course? And there's going to be more people next week. I have quite a few people who have said that they'll be here next week. I did give everybody pretty short notice, so. Alpha is the first letter in the Greek alphabet. It's used to refer to beginnings. So you can say Alpha is a beginner's course for exploring spiritual things. It's more than that, but that's an easy definition. There are 11 classes. We'll meet here every Monday at 6. We'll also live stream it, so if you can't make it, you can watch it on the YouTube. I'll open up with a few comments. Few is relative. Then we're going to watch a 20 to 30-minute video. Tonight's is about 20 minutes. And then afterwards, we're just going to open it up for discussion. What do you want? What did you think? What questions do you have? Anything's on the table. So let me start by saying this. You have not come to this Alpha class by accident, but by design. Remember that. Not by accident, but by design. You have a divine appointment, not with me, but with God. You might be saying to yourself, Brad, I came here because I had nothing better to do, or I felt obligated to come because you pressured me. I'm telling you because God is drawing you. Seriously, God is drawing you. God has a promise that I want to share with you tonight before we really even get started. First off, God is about relationships. Read the Bible cover to cover, and you'll find a book about relationships. It's all about relationships. So here's the promise that God gives. Draw near to me, and I will draw near to you. Just like in any relationship, when we take a step towards someone, it allows us, it gives us permission, it opens up an opportunity for that person to take a step towards us. You're a perfect example tonight. I asked you how your day was going. And before we know it, we're involved in a conversation. I'm getting to know you, you're getting to know me, and a relationship is forming, albeit a, high-level relationship. But that's how any relationship starts. You take a step, I opened up, how was your day? She took that opportunity to then communicate with me. That's how God works. God is always drawing you, always looking for you. And then when you respond to him, then that opens up the opportunity for him to respond to you. That's what I mean about draw near to God, and God will draw near to you. And that relationship will continue to develop, any relationship, as long as you're moving towards each other. If we get together for coffee, we talk, we text, that relationship gets deeper and more, and it gets deeper. So if you stop going towards something or somebody, if you came in next time and I just ignored you, our relationship stops there. It doesn't grow, it doesn't advance, and therefore it has the opportunity also to wither. Well, this Alpha course is designed to help us take another step towards God. We're all in the same boat. There's 11 videos. Each has a different topic. And what you're going to begin to see, if you don't already know, is we're all pretty much alike. We all somehow get those thoughts and hear the voices in our head that tells us, you're different. No one will understand. No one cares. You're hopeless. This is simply not true. So let me start out really quick before we watch the video. Let me just tell you a little bit about myself. Some of you know more than others about me, but I just wanted to share with you my state. I grew up in a broken family. I look back at that moment when my mother tried to explain to us what was happening. My father and my mother were no longer going to be together. We were going to have to uproot ourselves, move back to upstate New York, and then the beauty is we're going to move into my grandfather's house. And you say, oh, wow, grandfather's house, that's pretty cool. I didn't know my grandfather, and he really didn't like me or us. So that was tension. And I remember it like it was yesterday. I bawled my eyes out as I sat on the bed. As my other siblings, with my other siblings, and my mother tried to explain what was happening. I had no idea what was happening. I was 7 years old. I didn't know what was happening. I look back and I was already at that moment when she told me my dad was leaving, I was becoming numb. And when I look back, I realize now that my life was shattered on that day, at that moment. My dreams, even as a 7-year-old boy, were blown to smithereens. You said, oh, so what? Divorce. To me, it was devastating. The plunger was pushed, the dynamite exploded, and everything blew up that was meaningful to me. I became an observer of my life, never really that engaged. Walking through my life as I was a ghost, hardly seen or being seen. And I think some of you probably can identify. I drifted, I followed after anything I thought that could give me some sort of relief. Don't we all do that? I hoped that someone would notice me and how desperate I was. This is my teenage years, my early teens, late teens. I asked, please see me, please love me. That was the cry of my heart. Girls, friends, reading, knowledge, hobbies, sports, etc., 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 all in pursuit of a solution to my problem. What was my problem? The problem was bitter loneliness. Even when I was in a crowd, I was alone. I was the outsider looking in. I was never a part of what was going on. I was the observer. Then one day, my early 20s, my brother Ben came home, and he talked to me about this Jesus that he had found. I know, Jesus. However, for me, it was my time. It was my divine appointment. And it took a lot of circumstances and quite some time before I got what I was looking for from God. But he was drawing me, just as he's drawing you. I took a step towards God that day, and he took a step towards me. And you say, no, that's nice. You didn't know anything about God. It also applies to us, those who've been in the church forever, as the pastor, me, as you. It applies to all of us. You take a step towards God, and God will take a step towards you. And since that day, my life has gone through many ups and downs. I've had to dodge curveballs. I've hit some potholes. I've had to face an innumerable number of surprises. Haven't we all? Well, one thing I can say for sure, my life has meaning and a purpose now. Not because of anything that I have done, but because of everything that God has done. He has given me a purpose for living. He has met all of my needs and so much more than I could have ever hoped for or believed possible. And just as he has a purpose for me, so he has a purpose for you. He created you, he knows you, and the thing that simply blows my mind, it really does, it blows my mind, he wants to have a relationship with you. The God of the universe, the God who created this all, wants to have a relationship with you, Tom. Wants to have a relationship with you, Pastor. Wants to have a relationship with me. Wants to have a relationship with you. That blows my mind. Your life can have meaning. It can be filled with joy. It can be deeply satisfying. That deep, deep hole, some call it the God hole, deep in our innermost beings that cannot seem to be filled or satisfied. God can fill it. And I can say this with supreme confidence. Most of you here tonight have this nagging question that you ask yourself whenever you quiet yourself down. You know, those quiet moments when your cell phone's not in your hand, when no one is asking anything of you, when all is quiet. What is the meaning of life? But more importantly, what is my purpose? Don't we all ask that? Even those who are spiritually mature, those who know God very well, sometimes lay their head down at night and say, what's my purpose? The video we are watching tonight is called, Is There More to Life Than This? It's about 20 minutes long, so let's watch it, and afterwards we'll just talk about it. Any questions you have about anything you saw or anything I said. So let's watch.
Hi, I'm Nicky. Welcome to Alpha. Life is busy. Every day we ask so many questions. What should I wear? What's the weather going to be like? What's happening today? How am I going to fit everything in? But then there are those bigger questions. Like, why am I here? Where am I heading? Is this it? Is there more to life than this? These are life's big questions, but there's rarely enough time to think them through properly.
We all have different perspectives on the meaning of life and faith, and Alpha is an opportunity to explore life's big questions.
This is a great place to come together and talk about them openly and honestly. I'm Gemma.
I'm Toby.
And this is Alpha.
I go on Google.
I definitely Google
I go on Wikipedia.
internet.
I scroll through all the different answers, and then I try and combine it, and then make my own kind of cornerstone.
Or smart friends.
I don't ask big life questions. It's too hard to answer.
Google or my grandmother.
I meditate or I read.
When I have a big life questions, I probably go to my family.
I haven't really had any massive ones yet.
My mom or my dad, basically.
My mom or my dad, maybe my grand.
I get most of my answers from the library in any section there because I don't really trust the people that I'm around.
The key is always to yourself. You got to figure some things out for yourself.
If I'm confused, I go to him first. And he confuses me more.
But when it's something more personal, I try to find it within myself first.
Friends of mine told me that the first night they came to Alpha, they sat in their car for half an hour waiting and watching people going in, and eventually when they'd seen enough normal-looking people going in, they thought they'd give it a try.
And one thing that might be going through your mind is, am I going to be the only one there who doesn't believe all this stuff, who's not a Christian, that doesn't go to church? Well, if that's you, then you're in the right place. Alpha is designed for people who wouldn't call themselves Christians or who are not regular churchgoers.
It might feel a bit strange to be discussing life and faith with people that you've never met before, but the best thing about Alpha is often the great friendships that are formed over the weeks.
For much of my life, I was not remotely interested in Christianity. In fact, I don't think I'd ever come to something like Alpha. I was not brought up as a Christian. My father was a secular Jew. He was an agnostic, and my mother didn't go to church, and I had no interest at all in Christianity. First of all, I just thought it was so boring. Everything to me about church, Christianity, religion was just dull and dreary, and it kind of made me feel a little bit guilty. I didn't know why, but I just didn't want to have anything to do with it. And I also thought it was untrue. I thought I'd sort of thought it through, and I'd come up with these intellectual objections, and I called myself, very pretentiously, I called myself a logical determinist. And I quite enjoyed arguing with people who called themselves Christians. And at university, I had a bit of a reputation for being an argumentative atheist. And I also thought it was irrelevant to my life. I couldn't see how someone who'd lived 2,000 years ago, 2,000 miles away, could have any relevance to my life today. It just seemed outdated and irrelevant. But at the same time, looking back now, I would say something was missing. I say that because I don't think I was living in the moment. I was always looking forward to the next thing in life. So when I was at school, I was thinking, when I finish my exams, maybe that will be when I'm going to really start to enjoy life. I finished my exams, and then after about 3 weeks, I started to think there's got to be more to life than this. And I thought, well, maybe when I've left school, that will be what life's all about. And then I left school, and after about 3 weeks, I started to think, there's got to be more to life than this. I thought, well, maybe the answer is to get a girlfriend. And somehow, I don't know how I managed it, but I managed to find a girlfriend. Again, after about 3 weeks, I started to think, there's got to be more to life than this. And basically, there was something missing. I was longing for more.
The actor Jim Carrey once said, "I wish everyone could get rich and famous and have everything they've ever dreamed of, so they would know that's not the answer." Some people dream of having their name in lights, of fame and fortune. Some people dream of finding happiness through relationships, careers, money, whatever it may be. But do you ever get that niggly feeling that as good as those things are, there must be more to life?
Yeah, all too often life just doesn't turn out the way we think it should. And even when it does and we achieve our wildest dreams, it's somehow never quite enough. It just doesn't satisfy. It's like there's something missing. The comedian and actor Russell Brand said, "Drugs and alcohol are not my problem. Reality is my problem. Drugs and alcohol are my solution to fill up a hole inside me." And Jesus said, "I am the bread of life." In other words, I'm the one who fulfills the longing that's deep inside every human heart. Jesus claimed to be the one person who can satisfy that spiritual hunger.
Freddie Mercury, the lead singer of the rock group Queen, had amassed a huge fortune and attracted millions of fans. But he admitted in an interview shortly before his death that he was desperately lonely. He said this, "You can have everything in the world and still be the loneliest man, and that's the most bitter type of loneliness. Success has brought me world idolization and millions of pounds, but it's prevented me from having the one thing we all need, a loving, ongoing relationship."
Jesus said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." Ultimately, there's only one relationship that is totally loving and goes on forever, and that's a relationship with God. And Jesus said, "I am the way to that relationship."
Maybe money? What makes me happy? Music. Music, ice cream, and cheese.
Sleep makes me happy.
Going to the gym, seeing my friends, at the pub, play football.
Dogs.
Alcohol.
Women. Pretty much.
The idea of life in general makes me happy.
Clothes. Women. What's life in this?
That's a really good question.
I don't know. I can't tell you.
I think we're supposed to learn a couple of things. There's nothing more. I'm still figuring that out, to be honest.
No. Let's live in the moment.
Absolutely. I strongly believe that there's more to life than this.
No idea. Sorry. When I was about 17, I was sitting having a burger with two friends. and we were looking out the window and commenting on a few of the stores across the street, and I suddenly realized that I couldn't read any of the signs, even if I squinted. So I asked if I could borrow one of my friend's pair of glasses, and as soon as I put them on, I realized I could see everything, like colors, shapes, words. I was amazed at how everything was so clear. And I could see before, but now I could really see. And to me, that's the best way to describe the difference that Jesus makes. Jesus is the lens through which we see God. And he's also the lens by which we see the world in a totally different way.
Jesus said, I am the truth. Some people's response to a Christian might be, well, it's great for you, you found meaning and purpose in your life, but it's not for me. But when you think about it, that's not actually a logical position, because if Christianity is true, it's of vital importance to every one of us. And if it's not true, it's not great for us, because it means we're deluded. C.S. Lewis was one of the great intellectual giants of the 20th century, probably best known as the author of the Chronicles of Narnia. He said this: Christianity, if false, is of no importance, and if true, of infinite importance. The only thing it cannot be is moderately important. I come from a family of lawyers, so naturally I wanted to look at the original documents and sources. I never really looked at the evidence before, and I was astonished at how much evidence there is for the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. For me, it was through reading these documents that we find in the New Testament that I came to the conclusion, it's true. One of the last cases I did as a lawyer was in the Court of Appeal in front of Lord Denning, an absolutely brilliant mind, perhaps the greatest judge of the 20th century. He said on one occasion that his Bible was his most tattered book in his library. He'd examined the evidence really carefully, and he came to the conclusion, it's true. One former professor of history at Oxford University described the resurrection as the best attested fact in history. I hadn't realized how many of the pioneers of modern science were believers. Descartes, Newton, Kepler, Galileo, Locke, Copernicus, Faraday, Kelvin, Pasteur. Francis Collins, one of the greatest scientists of our time, was director of the Human Genome Project, mapping the 3 billion letters in the human DNA, considered by many to be the most significant scientific undertaking of our time. He describes how he encountered Jesus and came to believe in the truth of Christianity.
Well, in the home where I grew up, faith was not something that was talked about very much. My father was a professor of drama, my mother a playwright. When I went to college and those discussions in the dorm late at night about religion began to occur, I had no particular reason to attach value to a faith system. It had never been something I was familiar with or had internalized at all. And I assumed that any religious feelings that anyone held must be on the basis of some emotional experience, and I didn't trust those, or on the basis of some childhood indoctrination, which I felt I was fortunate to have missed. I loved the experience of learning about the human body and all of the components of that, and I particularly loved being introduced to genetics. But then I ended up in the medical school curriculum sitting at the bedside of patients with diseases. This was no longer an abstract study of molecules and organ systems. These were real people. And one afternoon, one of my patients, a wonderful elderly woman, much like a grandmother, who had very bad heart disease. She had a particularly bad episode of chest pain while I was with her. She got through it, and at the end of that, explained to me how her faith was the thing that helped her in that situation. She realized that the doctors around her weren't really giving her that much help, but her faith was. And after she finished her own very personal description of that faith, she turned to me, and I had been silent, and she looked at me quizzically, and she said, "What do you believe, doctor?" And ultimately, I had to admit to myself that her question had made me realize that I had arrived at an answer to the most important issue that we humans ever deal with. Is there a God? And I had arrived there without ever really looking at the evidence. And I was supposed to be a scientist. If there's one thing scientists claim they do is to arrive at conclusions based upon evidence. And I hadn't taken the trouble to do that. I was greatly assisted by a pastor who lived down the road, who I went and asked about all this. and who gave me a copy of C.S. Lewis's wonderful book, Mere Christianity. Because here was an Oxford scholar, a prodigiously developed intellect, who had traveled the same path. Within those pages, I realized for the first time that one can come to belief on a rational basis, and that in fact, given the many pointers that one sees around oneself in terms of the universe and it having a beginning, and its fine-tuning in terms of the way in which all those constants that determine the behavior of matter and energy seem to have been set just in a certain very precise range to make life possible. And many other things, including my beloved mathematics and why they actually work anyway to describe the universe, something that makes you think the Creator must have been a mathematician. That brought me then to the person of Jesus Christ as a person who was historically extremely well documented. That was news to me. I thought Christ was as much myth as history, and I realized after reading more about it, this was a historical figure upon which we have a great deal of evidence for his existence and his teachings, and even his rising from the dead in a literal way. That day at my patient's bedside started a journey for me, a journey that I was reluctant to begin, but I felt I needed to, a journey that I thought would result in strengthening my atheism, but to my surprise resulted in my conversion.
There's a difference between knowing facts about someone and really knowing them personally. Now, I've known my husband Phil for 3 years now, but suppose if before we met, I found him on a website called The Amazing Man. Now, there's no doubt I would have looked at him and thought, okay, I'm intrigued. But what if each page was dedicated to his amazing abilities, his sparkling personality, his tender heart, his extraordinary intelligence, and his cooking abilities? Well, I would think, wow, he does sound like an amazing person. But that's head knowledge. But I also have the privilege of being married to him, and I know that he's an amazing person, which is knowledge that comes from experience of relationship, and that's heart knowledge.
When Jesus said, I am the truth, he was talking about more than just a kind of intellectual truth. The Hebrew understanding of truth was truth as experienced. And there's a big difference between a kind of intellectual knowledge and a personal knowledge, between your head and your heart. So when someone says, I know Jesus is the truth, they're not just talking about being convinced of the evidence. They're also talking about experiencing a relationship with the risen Jesus Christ. So Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and lastly he said, I am the life. I have come that you may have life and have it to the full. Jesus came to deal with the things in our lives that stop us from enjoying life to the full, the things that spoil our lives.
I hate shopping. I loathe it. I think I'm allergic to shopping. But occasionally my wife Pippa persuades me to go shopping, and just after Christmas it was the sales, and she persuaded me to go shopping. And we went into the shop and we bought this very nice new sweater, the same colour as all my other sweaters. And we left the shop and we went to buy a present for her. And we went into this ghastly shop. It was so crowded. It was unbelievable. And even Pippa had had enough and said, okay, we're leaving. So we went to leave. And as we left, the security alarm went off. And the security guys moved in very quickly. And they stopped us all from leaving. And like the crowd that was trying to leave was stopped. And the crowd that was trying to come in was stopped. And we were there right in the middle. The 6 of us who were going through the security at that one time were all taken off and sectioned off from all the rest. And they wanted to see which one of the 6 of us had set off the alarm. So they sent one of them through, and that was fine. They obviously hadn't set it off. Then they sent the next one through. They obviously hadn't set it off. Then the 3rd, then the 4th. None of them set it off. So it was left with Pippa and I were standing there, and I thought, oh my goodness, I'm married to a shoplifter. It must be Pippa who's got set off the alarm. So they sent her through, and she didn't set it off. So I thought, oh my goodness, I've obviously got something. Someone must have planted something on me. I'm going to be arrested, I'm going to be sent to prison. All the crowd were watching, both sides. They were just watching this criminal who'd been caught going through. So they went through, and as I went through, the alarm went off. They took me to the side. They opened up my rucksack on my back, and there they found this sweater from the other shop with the tag still on it. I felt so guilty That was like false guilt. I also sometimes experience true feelings of guilt because I do things that are not right, that are not good. And this is the wonderful news that God loves you and he loves me. God came in the person of his Son, Jesus Christ, to die for you and for me. And on the cross, he took all of your guilt, all of my guilt, everything you've ever done wrong, everything I've ever done wrong, said wrong, thought wrong, and he died in our place in order that we could be forgiven. And forgiveness, C.S. Lewis said, is like a recording of our life, wiped completely clean. And when we receive that forgiveness, we find life, and life in all its fullness. And that's what Jesus wants for you and for me. Life in all its fullness. Life at its very, very best.
I think for so many years, I always just strived to be strong in myself. And it was as if that all I needed was me and my buddies and, would be like invincible. But the truth is, none of us are. And I don't want to do this thing called life. I don't want to do it on my own. And it kind of feels like my longing for this light inside is now stronger than my fear of what others might think. And people often ask, well, doesn't that make faith like a crutch? And, well, maybe, but, what does a crutch do? A crutch helps you stand, and it makes you stronger. And in that case, sure, I need a bit of that. But especially when it's so much more than that. When this faith inside is also like a backbone, helping me stand tall and helping me be strong when I'm really up against it, facing those odds, whether it's on a mountain or stuck in some jungle, or just dealing with the storms, with the storms of life. Sure, I need it, I need that. But at heart, my Christian faith says that I'm known to Christ. Bought at a price, blessed with light. Faith says that we're loved, regardless of our mess, regardless of how many times we fall down, and that Jesus somehow picks me up. And sure, I'll reach out to that. Why wouldn't I?
I used to think Christianity was boring, untrue, and irrelevant. But when I read about Jesus, I realized he was anything but. Jesus said he's the way to God. He's the one who brings meaning and purpose to your life. He said he's the truth. He said he's the life. The true fulfillment is found in a relationship with God through him.
Alpha is a place where you can be yourself. You can say what you think and challenge everything. No question is too complex or too simple. And what your point of view is as important as anyone else's.
And over the weeks ahead, we are going on a journey together. An adventure to explore the questions of life, faith, and meaning. Think of it this way. If you live to be 70, you're going to spend 20 years and 3 months asleep. 10 years and 5 months watching TV. 5 years and 9 months in some form of transportation. 7 years and 6 months eating and drinking. You have approximately 570,000 hours left to live. So why not spend less than 24 of them asking life's biggest questions?
Welcome to Alpha.
Pretty interesting video. What do you guys think? Do you have any questions, comments, thoughts? Yeah. Copernicus, and some of the greatest thinkers. It's not just, Christianity's just not for those who are in desperate need, in the sense that they're downtrodden, they're the homeless, the abused. Christianity is for everybody. Jesus Christ is for everybody. I have a couple questions. What does it mean to have a relationship with God? What does that mean? What are your thoughts on that? What does that mean? I mean, if you don't know God, that's kind of a weird statement. Yeah. Well, I'm thinking back when I first started my journey, as I mentioned. I didn't know anything about God. I wasn't brought up in a Christian home. We never went to church. I don't think I darkened a church until I was probably in my early 20s. I don't think I went to a funeral. I didn't go to Easter service, didn't go to Christmas. I didn't know anything about God until that night that my brother came home and talked to me. And I still didn't know much about God. All I knew is it was something I was interested in, and I wanted to know more about this God, this Jesus. Because, to be honest with you, I told you, I was desperate enough. I would have gone after a lot of different things. Fortunately, God orchestrated my divine appointment, if you want to call it that. And I like using that because it's not in our control. It wasn't my control. If left up to myself, I would have never known God. How could I? But God orchestrates a lot of things and brings us to a place where we can say yes to a relationship with Him. And a relationship, in my estimation, is just acknowledging, just as I acknowledged you when you came in, how was your day? Well, we can talk to God that way, those of us who have accepted Christ. And we'll learn about Jesus and what He did next week, because that's a key. That's a very fundamental key. But after you have that relationship going, it's an ongoing developing. Just as, like I said, if I texted you and say, hey, you want to get together for coffee, outside of the fact that we're, a man and a woman and, all that stuff. If I just said, hey, you want to have a cup of coffee with me? I want to know about what's going on in your father's estate. That's taking a step, another step, another step. And we learn about God through His Word, which is the Bible. But a relationship, just like Mary, my wife, we've been married 35 years this year. And what I know about my wife now compared to what I know about her when we first got married is like night and day. I'm sure the two of you know a lot more about each other now in your relationship as it developed. Well, it's the same thing with God. We don't know that much about God when we first start. But as we go along and that relationship develops, we learn more and more. I love the C.S. Lewis. Christianity, if false, is of no importance. And if true, of infinite importance. The only thing it cannot be is moderately important. And then the last thing I had that I wanted to ask, question, is what damages our relationships? We want to have a relationship with God. take our personal relationships. How do we damage those? Well, next time you come in, I snub you and don't talk to you, that's going to damage our relationship. If, Mercy, you call me and I don't answer, maybe the first time it won't damage, maybe the second time, but eventually that's going to damage our relationship. And God's the same way. God is tugging at your heart. He's tugging at all our hearts. He wants a deeper relationship with us. I don't care how old you are. I don't care how much you know God. He wants a deeper relationship with us. Take a step, draw near to me, and I will draw near to you. One simple question. Yeah.
Those two people would never, ever probably cross paths. That wasn't his idea, probably, of how he was going to find God.
Nope.
Was he the one having heart palpitations or whatever? But it set him on a journey.
I liked how Nikki said it, you know. He said, you know, if I get here, then that will fulfill me. Then I get over here. That didn't, you know, that was nice, like a new car. You know, new car for the first month, it's got the new smell. You're like, oh, this is awesome. AC, it comes right on. You got rear, you know, backup camera. Everything's cool. And then a month later, you're like, you're just getting in your car and driving because that's what it's worth. That's what it does for us. So we're on to the next thing and the next thing. His was different story than mine. Mine, I'm trying to find something. He thought the next great thing. I was searching for anything. You know, I think back to that time, and was I desperate? Yes. Was I looking for God? Absolutely not. God was looking for me. And that's one of the beauties. The beautiful thing, like I said, God of the universe wants to have a relationship with us. And I can tell you, and I'm sure most of you, or a lot of you can attest to it, we do have a relationship with God. And it seems so bizarre and so weird. I think back to before I knew who this God was. And I would have said, you're a wacko. You're strange. But now I'm on the other side. I'm like, as they said, it's the lens through how I see life. And our lives can be so much better, so much. Take a step towards God. I don't care if you've been in this church forever. You, wherever you're at right now, you take a step towards God in whatever the scenario is, and God will draw near to you. It's a promise. It's a promise. So I was going to have homework, but I think I'm going to forgo that. And then the only other thing, well, actually I don't have any other thing. Next week is going to be about who is Jesus Christ. And it goes into a little bit more detail than it did tonight, because that's the linchpin. That holds everything together. Why did Jesus come? Why did he have to die? What did he do for us? And it's a very important piece of the puzzle. And as we go along through these 11 courses, we're going to keep everything to an hour. Actually, we're going to be under tonight. So be prepared for next week. Think about, why did Jesus come? Why did he come? Some of you don't know that much about Jesus. That's fine. Why Jesus? Why him? Why God? Ask those questions of yourself. And the other thing just one other thing that reminded me. Don't be afraid to ask. And what I mean by that is, don't be afraid in your quiet moments to ask God. Reveal yourself. Show yourself. I have a friend, lived up north. He has a testimony. He didn't believe in God. He was searching, but he didn't believe. And one day he said, God, if you're real, prove it. And you know that day, not saying this is going to happen to you, but that day, he was in a grocery store. The register malfunctioned and printed out God on his receipt. He showed me it. I know it's true. And I just sit there, I'm like, God's not afraid of a challenge. God wants to reveal to you who he is. It doesn't matter if you're a non-believer, a believer, somebody who is established. God wants to know you, and he wants you to take another step towards him. As that relationship gets deeper and deeper, as you get closer, every step you take gets you closer to God as he gets closer to you. He's actually, in reality, he's been drawing you since you were born. But we're stubborn, we're hard-hearted, we're afraid, we have all these issues. Mercy could probably tell you all my issues. We're fallible. We're not perfect people, but he is. And so don't be afraid this week to challenge God. Say, God, reveal yourself to me. And it won't come the way you probably think it will. It's not going to be a God on the bottom of your receipt. I had another guy, and it's in the video actually. Later on, he talks about he was asking God a question, and he kept seeing billboards with the answer. Billboard after billboard after billboard. And it's like, okay, God, I think you're trying to tell me something. So be asking this week, wherever you are in your station of life, just ask God to reveal himself a little bit more. He's not going to come out of heaven and part the skies, but he'll show you who he is. No. No. Okay. Yeah, this Alpha course was created. There was an original Alpha course years and years ago. They updated it. As you can tell, it's in England, so their language is a little bit different. Some of the videos, the slang is so thick that they literally have to translate it for you. But it's well done. It hits the major points. And as we go through it, I think you'll all benefit from it. Anything else? Any other questions, comments? No? Okay. Well, that ends our class. See you next week. Appreciate everybody who was online. and have a good night.